Hello everyone. So today we have chapter 6 from my book, Breathing for Confidence. And the chapter heading is Technique for Breathing Out or Breath Management. And the quote is, "Exhaling is where the sound magic happens." And this quote is by me, Angelina Kalahari. The next morning, as Jake walked through the park again on his way to his lesson with Anne, he could hardly believe so much time had already gone by since he last saw her. But more than that, he was beyond grateful Anne could see him at such short notice. So much depended on her help and his ability to master quickly what she had already taught him and what he would learn from her today. He made sure his posture was correct and his stomach relaxed each time he inhaled. It was a technique he had learned many years ago, and he berated himself for neglecting to implement it properly recently. He didn't want to think about the show on Tuesday and what would happen to him if he didn't perform at his best, which was why he was so grateful Anne could see him today. This time, when Anne invited him in, and after checking his body's alignment and that his inhalation technique was correct, she got straight into the lesson. Exhaling is where the sound magic happens for singers and speakers, Jake. As we exhale, our lungs return to their former position. This happens naturally and passively during breathing out. But if we want to use our voice for deliberate speaking and singing, we need to control our out-breath. There are several points to consider. 1. We want our sound to be smooth and the quality of the sound to be equal. In other words, we don't want the sound to be shaky or unequal, and we don't want gaps in the sound. Instead, we want to balance the supply of breath and the energy required to produce the sound. 2. To control the sound to be beautiful and smooth, we use our abdominal muscles to control our out-breath. 3. We guard against breathing out all our air on the first word or note so that our breath lasts throughout the phrase we are speaking or singing. It all makes sense so far, doesn't it? Jake nodded. It all sounded very familiar, but he was glad he'd remembered to click record on his phone. The feeling in his body said this lesson would be vitally important to his future success. Anne got up, walked over to a small sideboard beneath the mirror, and poured herself some water from a carafe that stood on it. She offered a glass of water to Jake, who accepted it. He took small sips while listening to Anne's words as she sat down opposite him again and continued the lesson. So, let's examine quickly the muscles we need to pay attention to for breathing out. Remember, I told you there were several muscles involved in the respiration process, but I'm only interested in teaching you about those you'll be using for breathing out. The reason is it gets too complicated and confusing otherwise. Anne pointed to her body as she talked about the muscles. The 3 sheets of flat muscles, the internal and external oblique muscles and the transversus muscles, are the muscles we use to control our out-breath. They are attached to the rib cage and the highest part of the pelvis. These muscles pull from the sides and front parts of our abdomen. We also use the pelvic diaphragm, which, together with the other muscles, contracts during singing or speaking to maintain abdominal pressure. The real reason we use the abdominal muscles consciously in breathing out for singing and deliberate speaking is not only for control over the sound we produce, but it is also better to use our muscles to allow our breath to flow through our vocal folds rather than forcing the air through our vocal folds. In fact, forcing breath through our vocal folds invariably leads to using our neck muscles to produce sound, particularly when speaking louder or belting as we sing. Forcing our voice can seriously damage the vocal folds, so it is essential to learn to breathe sufficiently and control the out-breath for sustained sound. If there is any tension anywhere during inhalation and exhalation, especially in the muscles of the jaw, mouth, tongue, pharynx, and the neck, we get noisy breath-taking. How a singer or speaker hold themselves is also very important. Our posture and alignment must be correct so our lungs can fully extend for optimal breathing. If there is any tension in our shoulders or our muscles in our chest, then singers and speakers can experience a sense of false fullness. The same thing happens when we pull in our abdominal muscles while we breathe in. It feels as though we're full, and it prevents us from taking enough breath to sing or speak longer phrases. It means that all inhalation should be deep inside our bodies, even if we have to breathe in very quickly. For example, in a song that has an upbeat tempo, we often have to take quick, short breaths between the phrases. Do not skimp on the breathing, even if it is short breaths, because breathing through a song is cumulative. The same holds true for speakers, whose words sound choppy and staccato otherwise. When we come to sing notes in the next lesson, I'll explain exactly how to sing those quick notes so you do not miss a beat or a breath or a beat. Jake felt relieved at Anne's words because he was just about to ask what she meant before she explained herself. As though pre-agreed, both took sips of water at the same time before Anne continued. So, Jake, here comes the next technique I want to show you today. To maintain smooth, equal sound when we breathe out, it is essential to keep our ribcage out for as long as the phrase lasts, while our contracting abdominal muscles gradually relax our diaphragm. Don't worry, I will explain more about how to keep the ribcage out for singing and deliberate speaking when we come to that part in our lessons. But for now, please remember to keep your spine straight, your posture aligned, and your ribcage elevated when you breathe out. Our ribcage cannot help but move a little as we exhale because the muscles between our ribs contract. We also use those muscles to keep the ribcage extended. It sounds easy or complicated, depending on where you are in your journey. And it is a complicated process of muscular control which has to become unconscious for you to expand fully as an artist. But once it has happened, we can concentrate on developing you as an artist in touch with your soul, who brings messages of truth to your audience in a way they may not have experienced before. Jake smiled as he thought about the magical possibilities such a future could hold for him. But Anne didn't seem to notice and continued with the lesson. Right, Jake, so how do we practice exhaling? Anne got up and walked over to the sideboard again. She pulled out a candle, placed it in one of the beautiful candle holders that stood on either side of the sideboard. First, I ask my students to count while holding a candle. Obviously, I'm sure you'll be careful using a naked flame like this. But using a candle shows you exactly how much out-breath you use and how you use it. It's also a great visual aid to help you understand what you do to use your breath optimally. She walked back to Jake, lit the candle, and held it in front of her mouth. The trick is not to let the candle's flame go out as you count, or later as you speak or sing. Maybe count to 5 first, and then extend it to 10, or however long you can sustain your breath. The point is to show how long your breath can last and how much control you have while using your voice as you breathe out. Anne showed what she meant by slowly counting to 20, making sure the flame flickered as little as possible. When she reached 20, she stopped, but Jake could hear that she could easily have continued. Immediately, he wanted to have such impressive breath control and steeled himself for his turn. But Anne interrupted his thoughts with her words. While breathing out and concentrating on keeping the flame as inert as possible in front of your face, you need to pay particular attention to the technique of breathing out. It means you consciously allow your abdominal muscles to contract gradually while keeping your chest up and out and breathing out in a smooth, sustained way. It allows your voice to sound strong and firm. Once you can count to at least 15, with no need to breathe in between the numbers, you can use your voice for singing or speaking training. Anne passed the candle to Jake. Jake took it from her and started to count. But when he said 2, his T sound put out the flame. Anne lit the candle again. This time, Jake made it as far as 5 before letting out too much breath on the F sound and putting out the flame. It was more difficult than Jake had first imagined, but he was determined to master it because he could see the practical benefits in doing so. Again, Anne lit the candle for him. Jake soon realized that he could count without putting out the flame or making it flicker wildly when he used elongated legato sounds for the vowels and less emphasis on consonants. He knew it was still necessary to pronounce his consonants clearly, but he had been taught to almost overemphasize them, especially when singing musical theatre songs, and found he had to concentrate more than he would have imagined. Jake smiled because he'd never realized until now how much air escaped through his mouth in the process of overpronouncing consonants. But what was even clearer to him was the deep sense of centeredness and confidence that flowed through his body. He noticed that as he continued the rhythm of breathing in low in his body and controlling his out-breath, not only did his body feel stronger, but he also felt confident and secure in himself. Anne watched as Jake learned the lesson by himself and smiled at his success. When Jake could count to 20 without breathing in between and without putting out the flame, Anne took back the candle and went over to the piano. Right, Jake, let's have a look at what you do with breath when you use your voice for singing. Think about transferring what you felt and achieved in the earlier exercise with the candle. Jake followed Anne and stood at the curved side of the piano and turned his body towards her. Could you hum these 2 notes, please? Anne played C and G, 5 notes apart from each other, before moving on half a tone to the next 5 notes and further up the scale as Jake hummed. Jake recognized the exercise immediately, as it was one he had been doing for many years and he knew it well. As Anne played, Jake hummed the notes, but Anne stopped playing almost at once. No, Jake, don't force the air through your vocal folds like that. You will hurt your throat, and if you continue to do so in time, you will damage your vocal folds. Use your muscles in your body instead and allow the sound to travel through your mouth in a relaxed manner. Jake nodded to show he understood and that he was ready. Anne played the notes again. Jake hummed the notes and concentrated entirely on allowing his breath to be managed by pulling in his abdominal muscles. Anne stopped playing again. Jake, don't pull your stomach muscles in. Instead, allow them to move in slowly as your breath leaves your body. Don't force it. Can you see the difference? If you pull your stomach muscles in, your breath will escape too quickly and you will have none left to sustain the phrase. Also, by pulling in your abdominal muscles consciously, you are creating unnecessary tension in your body. I'm not sure how much technique you have studied before, Jake, but if you want to use your abdominal muscles effectively, especially your transverse abdominal muscles, pull up instead of in as you exhale. If you haven't learned how to do that yet, don't worry. I will show you how to do so in another lesson when we get to more serious voice work. Also, even though I haven't shown you the technique yet, the only tension you want to feel is from the muscles between your ribs, because you are keeping your rib cage up and out. But again, if you haven't learned the technique yet, I will show you how to do it in another lesson on voice. For now, to get the best control over your abdominal muscles, all you have to do is squeeze your bum. If you do that, you'll feel all the muscles in your abdomen that support your voice contract correctly. Even though these muscles aren't directly attached to your gluteus maximus, everything in our body is connected. Squeezing your bum, therefore, will give you the experience of what it feels like when your abdominal muscles contract properly. That way, when it comes time for you to use those muscles, you will be familiar with the feeling when you engage them correctly. If you put your hands on the highest points of your hips so that your thumb points towards your gluteus maximus while your other fingers point towards your lower abdomen, you'll feel the muscles there contract as you squeeze your bum. Anne smiled at the look on Jake's face. Don't worry, you won't always have to squeeze your bum. This is just an exercise to get you used to the feeling of your muscles contracting without you overthinking it. You might be surprised to learn that even opera singers do this, especially when they hit a high note at the end of an opera when they are exhausted. To use your gluteus maximus muscles to good effect, your body has to coordinate breathing and squeezing. We breathe first, squeeze, then sing or speak. If you squeeze and then try to breathe, you won't be able to do so optimally, because when your muscles are engaged, your lungs cannot extend. You will then breathe too high in your chest and cause tension there. There is a rhythm to the coordination. Breathe low in your body, squeeze your bum, and hum while you gradually and consciously relax your abdominal muscles. When you reach the end of the phrase, or in this case, the singing exercise, relax all your muscles and do it all again until you're able to sing or speak phrase after phrase in this way. Jake nodded, tried again, and squeezed his bum as he hummed. But he lost concentration for a second as his mind chose this moment to remind him of his upcoming performance in Wicked. How was he going to implement these techniques? The performance was tomorrow. There was no time. He was just about to panic when suddenly he found his voice flowing out of his mouth with no help from him. Anne stopped playing again. That's great, Jake. I can tell from the way you sound and also from the way you're holding your body now, you've banished the trauma of your failed TV audition and the less than perfect performance in Wicked the other night. I think you've broken that particular barrier, Jake, and I'll bet your next Wicked performance will be the best yet. Jake nodded. Yes, I think you're right, Anne. It feels as though something has definitely shifted today. I wouldn't have imagined that breathing alone could cause such a dramatic change in me. Anne smiled. Well, as I said during your first lesson with me, our breath is the canvas on which we paint our sound pictures, and I know you have absorbed that lesson thoroughly today. Plus, now, there is no tension anywhere apart from your glutes. It pays to relax and squeeze your bum. To recap, even though most of our muscles for breathing is in our chest, we use our abdominal muscles to control our out-breath deliberately. To control our out-breath, we need to consider 1. We want our sound to be smooth and the quality of the sound to be equal. In other words, We don't want the sound to be shaky or unequal, and we don't want gaps in the sound. Instead, we want to balance the supply of breath and the energy required to produce the sound. 2. To control the sound to be beautiful and smooth, we use our abdominal muscles to control our out-breath. 3. We guard against breathing out all our air on the first word or note so that our breath lasts throughout the phrase we're speaking or singing. We use our abdominal muscles to control our out-breath and our voice. The 3 sheets of flat muscles, the internal and external oblique muscles, and the transversus muscles, are the muscles we use to control our out-breath. They are attached to the rib cage and the highest part of the pelvis. These muscles pull from the sides and the front parts of our abdomen. We also use the pelvic diaphragm, which together with the other muscles contracts during singing or speaking to maintain abdominal pressure. Do not pull in your abdominal muscles. Instead, allow them to return to their resting state naturally as you breathe out. When learning breath and voice control, we squeeze our bum instead of focusing directly on our abdominal muscles at first, at least. As everything in your body is connected, you will feel how the abdominal muscles work without impeding it. That way, you can fully concentrate on developing your breath and sound control properly first. Squeezing your bum will give you the experience of what it's like when your muscles contract properly. That way, when it comes time for you to use your abdominal muscles, you will be familiar with the feeling when you engage them correctly. To feel your muscles working together, put your hands on the highest points of your hips so that your thumb points towards your gluteus maximus while your other fingers point toward your lower abdomen. You'll feel the muscles there contract as you squeeze your bum. When starting to learn breath control, use a candle. That way you can see how much out-breath you use, and it will lead you to a better understanding of using your breath optimally. But please be careful with naked flames, and if you're younger, make sure an adult is with you while you're doing these exercises. If you have long hair or a beard, please make sure you keep it away from the flame. Put the candle in a candle holder so you do not burn your hand, and light the candle. Hold the candle a few inches away from your mouth. Count as high as you can, and each day try to count higher until you can count to at least 15 on a single breath without making the flame flicker or putting it out. Don't forget to put out the candle at the end of your exercises. You may find it works better if you draw out speaking your numbers and don't make explosive sounds on consonants. Once you can count to 15 without taking a breath in between the numbers, you are ready to start your voice training. Humming is the best way to practice this, even if you're not a singer. There is a rhythm to the coordination. Breathe low in your body, squeeze your bum, and hum while you gradually and consciously relax your abdominal muscles. When you reach the end of the phrase, or in this case, the singing exercise, relax all your muscles and do it all again until you're able to sing or speak phrase after phrase in this way. If you have a piano or keyboard, use the breathing techniques you have learned in this and the previous chapters. Hum 5 consecutive notes up and down, or 2 notes, 5 notes apart from each other, starting at middle C if you're a soprano or tenor, and an octave lower if you're a baritone or a bass. If you don't have a piano or keyboard, hum the first phrase of any song you like, using the techniques you've learned so far. Don't forget to breathe low in your body, squeeze your bum, and hum while gradually relaxing your abdominal muscles. Then relax all your muscles and do it all again until you're able to sing phrase after phrase in this way. Thank you for listening and for watching, and I will see you next time.